We're in Exodus chapter 21. Exodus 21. Let me tell you some of the value that's in the book of Exodus and the section that we're entering into. We've gone through the 10 commandments, and God has given these, redeemed them from Exodus. He's also showed us all these types of the coming king, the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ, when he gets here, etc. And so that when Jesus got here, he was very, very clear in his mind and heart. There's no excuse for not knowing who he is. There's no excuse for not getting this right unless your heart just wasn't right, kind of thing. And so you can learn from that Christianity is not about having all the answers that people are never going to accept anyway, right? An honest heart takes care of a lot of that stuff. But sometimes when we're in the Gospels, we see Jesus dealing with cultural things and the laws of Israel in the common day, everyday things in which they were trafficking in. And as he does that, we're going to actually see Israel's laws and how they related out in the community, right? And so we'll see Jesus taking their hermeneutics, their interpretation of these texts in the Old Testament. He takes them to task and just says, no, that's not what it said. Wrong person, you got it wrong. It's singular, it's not plural. He does all those things. And we need to be aware of the fact that we do the same thing in our day, okay? Let me give you an example. You hear people, and when I came to know the Lord, I learned a whole bunch of verses by hearing them, okay? And they were out of context. And so I learned them wrong, and later on I'm trying to figure these things out. All right, so where two or more are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst. Everybody's heard that, okay? Do we know the context? The context is confronting a sinning brother. And the very words themselves by that, where two or more are gathered, I'm with them. What does that mean if there's only one of you? You understand where this is going? Jesus is not with me more or less depending on the numbers. It just doesn't work that way. And God is with me in the midst when I have to go confront a sinning brother or when a sinning brother is confronting me. All right? Eye has not seen, ears not heard, nor has it entered into the hearts the things that God has prepared for those who love him. And you hear, oh man, we haven't seen nothing yet. No. But the text goes on to say, but God has revealed them to us. These things that nobody can figure out, he's revealed them through us. We have the mind of Christ, and now we know them. All right, see it? So anyway, I learned both those passages wrong, I think, or just hearsay. Now, the difference is Jesus, when he was dealing with the scribes and the Pharisees, these are supposed to be guys that know the scriptures. I mean, the scribes in particular, these are the lawmen who actually have to use these passages for court cases and things like that. So as we look at this, he was a bit more severe with them, kind of thing, as we would all be. You know, it's one thing if you misquote a verse and you're a new Christian versus you misquote a verse and you've been a Christian for 40 years. Come on, surely you've read your Bible by now. All right, so all right, let's jump in here. Chapter 21. Now, these are the ordinances which you're going to set before them. Now, this is the law of slaves and how slavery worked in Israel. Okay? If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years. He's Jewish, okay? But on the 7th year, he will go out as a free man without payment. You could buy a Jew, yes. If he couldn't pay his bills, he was sold. Because the bills will be paid one way or another, right? See? Now, there are restrictions and limitations. It can't be for more than 6 years. At the end of 6 years, he's finished. Because that 7th year, God builds everything around sevens for some reason. All right. If he comes in alone, he will go out alone. If he's the husband of a wife, then his wife will go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, now notice he may be a Jew, but he has a master now. Okay? If he gives him a wife and she bears sons and daughters, that wife and her children will belong to her master, and he will go out alone. That's just a reminder that he is still a slave because he's got himself into this situation or whatever that is, okay? Now, he has to be careful because he can't just treat him, he can't abuse him, that's for sure. He's got to treat him like an employee, etc. Verse 5, but if he plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I'm not going to go out as a free man. And that master will bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door, or the doorpost, and his master will pierce his ear with an awl, and he will serve him eternally, forever. He will never go out, right? puts a hole through his ear that he listens and obeys that household, um, etc. Why would somebody choose to stay in a situation like that? Because in America, when Americans talk about slavery, what comes to your mind, right? All of the abuses and beating, and right. So they don't think of a situation where a slave could be better off than a free man. Okay, they have no conception of that in America. They're very anti. Now, notice this is a man who chooses slavery because he may be better off, right? I think, and I've always in my mind pictured um, a chauffeur or a gentleman's gentleman, which they can be the same. That a man who serves a rich man, but he actually has to go to a gentleman's school and learn how to do that. He's got to learn everything from how the plate settings are down there and have the ruler which sets for the where the plate sits on the table, right? And he's going to dine on champagne and caviar. He's going to drive around in a Rolls Royce. Everywhere his master goes, he flies with him. And you guys have seen the movies. How's he dressed? He's dressed to the nines, isn't he? I think. So he can leave that and go work for $20 an hour. He can stay right there, right? How many of you drive a Rolls Royce? Get the idea here. You can be pretty well off and be serving. Solomon, the Queen of Sheba, was overwhelmed by the servants that stood in his presence. Everything, how they were dressed. How do you think they were dressed? Not t-shirts. These guys are dressed for royalty. They stand in the presence of the wisest man in the world. And they also stand in the presence of a man who invests heavily, and they listen to every business deal he makes. And so when he buys, what would you do? You'd buy. When he sells, what would you do? You get the idea. Talk about insider trading for the stock market, as it were. Okay. Now, there may be a time when this is in Israel, and this is how this was done. He cannot be abused. Okay. If a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves do. If she's displeasing in the eyes of her master, who designated her for himself, that is, he's paying a dowry and buying her as a wife, then he will let her be redeemed. He does not have authority to sell her to a foreign people because of his unfairness to her. If he designates her for his son, he will deal with her according to the custom of daughters. Now, he has to treat her fairly and treat her like she's a daughter. Now, this is more than 3,000 years old. This is 3,500 years old. Okay. Never, ever, ever judge an ancient culture by your culture. Okay. In their basic practices. Now, you want to judge a culture if they're killing each other. Yes, that's bad. But as far as the practices in that day, they don't have cars and freeways and Walmarts like we have here. This is a different world. This is very much a different world. Okay. And I've always wondered, when I was growing up as a boy, you used to tell a young lady, you look like $1 million. Or she could tell a guy, you look like $1 million, okay? These guys may have to cough up $1 million. So while we say, you look like $1 million, but guess how much I'll pay for you? Nothing. All right? Which one is more valuable, okay? And I know of women who are in foreign countries, they want a proper purchase. In their culture, I expect to be purchased and for a fair price, and I want a proper purchase. That's what they want. Because that money actually is her dowry and backup, and some of that is her retirement if she ever has a problem. Okay, because the guy doesn't get that back, but she is taken care of. She is taken care of. And also, do you remember Jacob working 7 years? Ladies, how would you like to think that a guy would work 7 years for your hand in marriage before he can ever touch you? 7 years, because you're worth that to him. All right. Verse 10. If he takes to himself another woman, he may not reduce her food, her clothing, or her conjugal rights. He's still the head of that home as a lady. In those days, they were taking more than one wife, etc. And if he will not do these things for her, that she can go out for nothing and without money, because she has financial value. And he has just lost all of that, okay? By the way, if you don't have Walmarts or shopping centers, where do you get your clothing? You make your clothing. Nobody buys a sack of flour. Where are you going to get flour? Okay? You're gonna pound it down, and you're going to have to bake it. You're going to have to light a fire to bake it, etc. Okay, so these ladies are of tremendous value. He's going out to the fields to bring home some wheat, and she's going to have to pound it down or help pound it down. There, as the kids come, she's got to make clothing. That's how it's done, kind of thing. And so this is not our world of today. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and a woman who knows her way around a kitchen, knows her way around making clothing, knows her way around all kinds of things is of tremendous value. Okay, and you don't find a lot of people marrying for love. They're marrying. They would make contracts and agreements, and this is how this was done. Okay? And I've always think you can see ancient America in the same thing. One of the things when we do weddings, there used to be a phrase: "You may now," what is it? Kiss the bride. And so oftentimes it would be the first time that he's kissed her. Okay, I was at a wedding of a friend of mine, and he has his daughter, and he got a call from a friend of his in Boise, and they had similar backgrounds. And so, matter of fact, I met with him when he was going to have a meeting with him, and found out some details later on that this young man approached his father and said, "Dad, I want you to help me to get a wife. I don't know what I'm doing." And his father said, like I know. So he called Fred, and Fred has all these girls. He's got like 10 kids, and he's got a lot of girls and getting married at marriageable age. So, and he had the same concerns. So they went down there and made their agreement. When I went to the wedding, those two stood up there and they held hands, and they were getting ready to take vows. He says, "You're seeing something for the first time. They've never held hands. They've never done anything like that." So it was all new to them, very much new to them. Okay. By the way, I'm not saying you can't hold hands, because that was their choice. Okay. Verse 12. If you strike a man so that he dies, that man shall be put to death. But if he didn't lie in wait, and there was no venom, right, for him, but God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint a place for you, the cities of refuge. Now, I want you to notice, this guy died by accident, and verse 13 says God was in it. Nobody lives and nobody dies without God's hand involved in this, and accidental death is still also under the hand of God. All right? Now, this guy doesn't know that he's going to be standing in front of a loose-handled axe or whatever this is. He will die by accident, but he will not die by the ignorance of God. Okay? Now, remember, God restrains sin. He restrains events, or he leads us into events for whatever reasons he has them. Okay? Would God ever lead you to a stormy sea? Of course he would. He's done it before, he'd do it again. An accidental death. And let me tell you something, when things happen, particularly with accidental deaths, and a man is struggling with guilt and depression and things like that because he's killed somebody, right? He is going to have to rely on the sovereignty of God in all things, okay? In all things, and realize every man's breath is in the hands of God, and both how he enters into this world and how he departs this world. Okay? Verse 14. If, however, a man acts presumptuously towards his neighbor so as to kill him craftily, you are to take him even from my altar that he may die. Years ago, I read a book called Lords of the Earth. And in that book, if you could get to a sacred altar of those tribes in Irian Jaya, that tribe would not touch you. You may be enemies, but you're home free. You're at a sacred base, and they couldn't go in there. You'll notice the God of the Bible says, "No, go get him." That happened when David turned a king over to Solomon. One of these bad guys grabbed onto the altars and said, "Let me die here." Solomon said, "So be it." And that's how that happens. With God, there is no escape from those type of things. All right? And again, there is a difference. If a man dies by accident, he is not to be prosecuted like a murderer is. Verse 15. He who strikes his father or his mother will be put to death. The idea of giving your mother a fist to the head or your dad a fist to the head or something like that was intolerable. It maintains society when children have to be respectful to parents and value them. Okay? He who kidnaps a man, this is literally He who steals a man, it doesn't tell you his age. It could be a boy, it could be a young man, it could be, etc. Kidnapping, but he's a man. Whether he sells him or he's found in his possession, he would be put to death. So what's the penalty for kidnapping? You die. You're stealing that young man's life, right? Or a young lady's life from them. I can't imagine that, but it is a death penalty. You don't steal people, okay? 17. He who curses his father or his mother will be put to death. The word curse here means to shrug somebody off, and it means to literally to be light, and it has no weight, it has no glory, it has no importance. It's actually translated leaves, because when the wind hits the leaves, what do the leaves do? They have no weight, right? They have nothing, right? And to shrug your dad and your mom off like that, we don't do that. Treat them like their words mean nothing. Who are they? Etc. Right? So you do that to your dad and your mom, and you're out of control is the implication here. It will be the death penalty. 18. If men have a quarrel and one strikes another with a stone or with his fist, if he does not die but he remains in bed, it's going to use the term Sabbath, by the way, for resting. Okay. If he stands up and he walks around outside on his staff or a walking stick, and he who struck him shall go unpunished. That he's walking around is proof that he wasn't trying to kill him, even though he hurt him. Okay. He shall only pay for his Sabbathing, is the Hebrew word. He's okay. By the way, if he's Sabbathing for 8 days or 2 weeks, how long did this guy Sabbath? 8 days or 2 weeks. Every single day is a Sabbath because he's resting, convalescing. And he will take care of him until he is completely healed. He's got to pay for his bills. Verse 20, if a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod, and he dies at his hand, he shall be punished. By the way, in many countries, if you have slaves, you can kill them. You can do anything you want to do with them. Not the case in Israel. If, however, he survives a day or two, no vengeance will be taken, for he is his money, property or money. Okay, that is, obviously did not intend to kill him. If men struggle with each other and strike a woman with child, by the way, this is an issue. I've seen this several times where two guys are having a brawl, and somebody's wife jumps into it. It's just incredible. And years ago, a friend of mine, he retired from the Los Angeles Police Department. He said, man, you go to arrest a guy, and if it gives you any problem, it's common for the woman to jump in and start wailing on the police officer. Kind of thing. No, it won't end well, but that's not the point. Ladies defend their husbands. They just do that, right? Now notice, she gets hit because there's a brawl going on. The two guys are going at it, okay? But she's with child, so that she has a miscarriage. Yet there's no further injury. He shall surely be fined, as a woman's husband may demand of him, and he shall pay as the judges decide. Now notice, judges are for the first time. They're brought in because this needs to be fair, okay? We don't know if she got hit on purpose or she got hit accidentally. Whatever the case is, she's going to lose the child. I want you to notice something here. If two guys are having a brawl and the woman jumps into that, and she's pregnant, my goodness, this is crazy. You will notice there's an expectation of this verse that whoever is not married to her, walk away. Get out of it before something happens. Okay? Walk away. Take your licking, turn the cheek, and no amount of money is worth that. Deal with this issue sometimes without her being involved. Okay? But if there's any further injury, that he takes advantage of that situation, maybe beat the guy and he wouldn't walk over and slap her around or something like that, then you are going to appoint as a penalty life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, and foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Now notice, the judges are there. There is a judge. This is in a courtroom. So Jesus said, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I'm telling you, you can't take the judges' things like that in courtrooms and apply that to your own life. You can't do that. You know, somebody does something wrong, there are judges for that. And this is the standard for that. And the Jewish people were using that and the Jewish leaders were doing that. You've heard it said because that's what they were doing. The law says this, so I can do it regardless of the courts and judges. Well, that's just profound. We'll all be a mess. We'll all be a tremendous mess. Yeah. Verse 26, if a man strikes the eye of his male or female slave and destroys it, he shall let him go free on account of his eye. This has not been true of most slavery. Most slavery in the history of the world has just been abuse, and you can get away with it and do those type of things. In Israel, no. Okay. By the way, he's going to say, sojourners, people passing through, same law. So if you hurt your slave while you're on Israeli soil, that slave is free. And the Lord actually says you do not send him back to his master. His master needs to just move on. It's a land of no abuses like that. Verse 27. If he knocks out a tooth of his male or female slave, he shall let him go free on account of his tooth. Okay? By the way, if you've got a decent slave, this guy's worth a lot of money. This guy's worth a lot of money to you, right? I think they're paying off debts to you and different things like that. So your loss financially is going to be huge. Huge. 28. If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, that ox will surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of that ox shall go unpunished. Okay? Now, an oxen is not like a regular bull. They're pretty docile, but now and then you get one who's not. Okay? And if he gores somebody, or you could make the same argument now. You got some great big dog who is vicious, right? It's the same thing. You can't have a dog running around chewing up the neighbor kids and everybody else and say, there's no excuse for it. Okay? Verse 29. If, however, an ox was previously in the habit of goring, and he knew is the idea, its owner has been warned. That is, the neighbor came over and warned him, etc., kind of thing. And he does not confine it, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox will be stoned, its owner shall be put to death. Because he had a wild animal, and he's realized that if anything happens, somebody's going to get killed. Well, that's a decision you've made. You cannot do this, kind of thing, I got to tell you, it's been about, within this last year, I was taking a walk, and this great big, huge dog came in. And I know where this dog lives, and he's vicious. And you wouldn't want to turn your back on him. And while he was out and 3 or 4 houses down on the road, I have no idea. But I watched him come charging at me, vicious and growling. I had a light jacket on, and I was pulling it off as quickly as I could pull it off, and I wrapped it around my left arm, just because I thought if he comes at me, I'd rather do it that way. And hopefully he'll grab my coat. Well, he just got within inches of me and literally just was giving me what for. And I knew his name, so I was yelling at him, that kind of thing. And when he stopped, I marched right to that house to the owner. I said, here's the thing. Your dog was threatening me, that kind of thing, and et cetera. And he was out there working on some things, letting his dog run. The dog's down the road. I think the idea. You'll notice when it comes to an animal like that, you're responsible for that. Okay? And why is it? There's a certain amount of guy that likes a Rottweiler. And he likes a mean fighting Rottweiler, right? There's a certain character that goes with, kind of thing. And it's not good character, kind of thing. And by the way, there are mellow Rottweilers, and there's mellow German Shepherds, and there are mellow Dobermans. Not very often, but they're out there, kind of thing like that. But if you can't handle that animal, then you need to get rid of it. I had a dear friend of mine, Jack Schaefer, he had a ranch and he had cattle. And about once a year, one of the cows would just stomp him. And his cattle dog saved his life over and over again. But Jack had a habit of slaughtering one beef a year for his meat. Guess which one he slaughtered every year? You may stomp him, but you're only going to do it once, kind of thing. Of course, and that old dog of his would get in there really fast, kind of thing. Some of those cows are they're worried about their calves or whatever, it don't matter. That animal was just gone, and I respected him for that. Okay? Verse 30. Now notice, if a ransom is demanded to him, now he's got an option because their family's involved here, then he shall give the redemption for his life, whether it is if it's whatever is demanded of him. You want to die or not? Well, here's your option. Okay. And by the way, if it's the kinsman redeemer type thing, he may not have that option. 31. Whether it gores a son or a daughter, it shall be done to him according to the same rule. Now, this is serious stuff. Somebody gets killed because of this animal. If the ox gores a male or a female slave, the owner shall give his or her master 30 shekels of silver. That's something, isn't it? About 12 ounces of silver. In today's market, that's less than $300. And the ox shall be stoned. By the way, who else had 30 pieces of silver given for them? Jesus did. Hosea did for his wife. Gomer, 33. Now, mind you, these were the actual laws that were in Israel. They were to function according to this. King David ruled according to these laws. Solomon ruled according to these laws. Okay. If a man opens up a pit, now a pit is like a well. He opens it up. This thing's going deep. Okay. Or he digs a pit and he does not cover it over, an ox or a donkey may fall into it. Okay. The owner of that pit shall make restitution, and he will give money to its owner, and the dead animal shall become his. Not to mention, he's got to get him out of a pit or a well. Okay. By the way, this is the closest thing that comes to my mind, because we don't dig our own wells anymore. These things used to be dug by hand, and you would go straight down until you hit water. It could be a long ways. Anyway, but if you go to a construction site like where they're building houses and things like that, there are laws about what's supposed to be going on in construction sites, right? The OSHA laws and some things like that. I've seen guys get fined from not being tied onto roofs or things that just weren't up to code or things like that. I've seen that with my own eyes, kind of thing. You don't want anybody hurt. Oftentimes there'll be a sign there, or they'll have that thing, construction site portioned out. Different construction guys do different things. Okay, but if you're pulling down old lumber and we got construction guys. What do you do if these things you've got nails sticking out all over them? Typically, you bend them over. Why would you bend them over? Because some kid is invariably going to come onto a job site. If I was a kid and that was across the street from me, I'd be over there because I was just that kind of a kid. I'm going to go exploring. Okay, might find something really cool. I took my oldest grandson with me one time. This is years ago. I just had a roofing little short job to finish up this. I went out there. It was new construction, and there's all these cut up pieces of wood that are out there off of 2x4s and stuff like that. And he found treasures. Okay. And he said, I can't believe that these guys are throwing this stuff away. He's piling this stuff on. Can I take this home? Because he sees building blocks and awesome things out there. Because that's what boys do. Okay? And if a boy sees you over there digging your pit, what's he going to do? He's going to go check it out. Okay? But it needs to be covered. It needs to have some kind of warning here. This is not bad. Okay, we're not going to get to it today, but the same thing in those days in the Bible, we'll talk about mowing the lawn on your roof because roofs had grass up there to help the sod and stuff stay put so it would shed water. All right, but he said you must put a hand railing around your roof. Okay, you have to do it by law. You have to do it. Why? Because if it's new construction, what are your neighbor boys going to do? They're going to go up there. Of course, they're going to go up there. They're going to check it out. That's what boys do. Kind of thing. So it doesn't matter if he's right or wrong. It's a safety hazard, and somebody could die. It's that serious. All right. You're going to make restitution. You just bought a cow, or you just bought this animal. Okay, and you own him. Where is he? He's a long way down there, and now you got to get him out. Okay? Verse 35. If one man's ox hurts another man's so that he gores another oxen to death, they shall sell the live ox and divide its price equally. Also, they will divide the dead ox because they can see if they find it quick enough, they can bleed it out and split it up and harvest it. But either way. Or if it is known that the ox was previously in the habit of goring, he knew, yet its owner had not confined it, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead animal will become his. And again, this man has been warned, and he knows the animal is dangerous. He knows he's 22 verse 1. If a man steals an ox or a sheep, crime will pay. And he slaughters it or sells it, he will pay 5 oxen for the ox, 4 sheep for the sheep. How's that for a good penalty, right? He steals. Now notice, it's more expensive for a bigger animal. Steals your bull, got to give you 5 back. Perfectly fair. Okay. I don't know what a good breeding bull would be worth today. Probably $20,000-$30,000. Okay. So the payment in return is going to be expensive. Now the assumption here is a farmer stealing from a farmer. Okay. Same thing with sheep. 4 sheep for that. Okay. Do you remember Zacchaeus? Whatever I took from people, I will give them, and I'll give them more back, right? And Jesus says, healing or restoration has come to this man's house. He's got a clue. He knew that this is the penalty for that, and I'm willing to pay those penalties. Okay, verse 2. If the thief is caught while he's breaking in, and he is struck so that he dies, there's no blood guiltness on that account. But if the sun has risen, so verse 2 is talking about he gets hit because he breaks in the house at night, and there's no light switches. Okay, and you get up, you have your wife, you have your kids, and you are well aware that there's somebody in my home. Okay, is he armed? I do not know. I cannot see him. Okay, that guy, and you don't know. If he dies because he gets hit with a 2x4, that's nobody's guilty. He shouldn't have been in your home, and you can't tell if he's armed, if he's there to kill you, if he's there to harm you, or what he's doing. If the sun is risen, verse 3, there will be blood guiltness. If you can see he's not armed, you can't kill him. You can chase him off or have him arrested. He will surely make restitution. If he owns nothing, then you're going to be selling him for his theft. By the way, like Hosea's wife, she's auctioned off. You got to pay. You got to pay. Okay? And you will notice there's no provision here. If you get in debt over what you can pay back, that's a problem, because the Bible does not provide you with the opportunity to walk away and not pay your debts. It doesn't even allow you to go to court. And like our president, he just wants to negate everybody's contracts for paying what they owe, like that thing, right? Who are you to negate covenants and contracts and agreements that men make with banks and different people? That's an evil act. You're not here to do that. You shouldn't be doing it any more than California. For years, people didn't have to pay their rent. Multi-millionaires didn't pay their agreed rents either, because it was carte blanche across the board. I don't have to pay you because of COVID, which goes on for years. Well, I don't have to pay you for years. I can stay here, and when I see something happening, I can leave, as many of those people some will do, etc. Not pay your bills. That is not Christianity. And I've seen Christianities do that stuff before and violate the word of God because a judge says they could. What is that? Now, if a guy realizes you're in over your head, he wants to give you a discount or he wants to cancel your debt, he's got the right to do that. Then you're free to do that. But these are agreements between men. That's okay. It's not like me just saying, I've decided I'm not going to pay you. Okay. By the way, to whom much is given, much is required. Very true in banking too, isn't it? If you're going to take out a multi-million-dollar loan and buy a farm, you're in pretty deep, and much will be required of you. Okay? If you don't want to be in that deep, then don't get in that deep. Count the costs, he said, before you. Verse 4. If what he has stolen is actually found alive in his possession, whether an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he will pay double. Okay, so he stole your bull. Now he's got to give you the money for 2 more bulls. You pay double because you got your animal back. All right. Years ago, I hadn't been married very long, and I was working at this restaurant and going to school, going to seminary. And this guy comes in. There was 2 couples that came in, and they were just drunker than There were many sheets to the wind. And one of the guys and his wife were having this screaming fight right there in public and doing those things. And I'm behind the counter, and he starts screaming, and he's chased me behind. He came behind the counter, he's chased me. I don't want to do with this kind of thing. And the manager, who was a gal, she comes out and she hears him, comes out there, and she asks him to leave. So he punched her. And at that point in time, I grabbed him from behind and ran, and we flipped out the front of the front door, but totally by accident. And this brawl ensued, and we went to court, and he got charged $50 for that violence. I looked at that and I thought, if I stood outside that door when the judge walked down there and I punched him, I wonder if my fine would be $50. That's what came to my mind. That's not a fair thing for what the guy did. We got customers there, and this guy's, first of all, he's drunk in public, and somebody they drove there, and they're driving. You get the idea. He will pay double, okay? And again, that, notice there are limitations set too, right? You cannot abuse this man. No. Stealing a candy bar in some countries where they're going to cut your hand off, is that justice? It is not. It's cruel. It's cold. It's way over the top. You should never be cutting somebody's hand off for a Twinkie. Get the idea? So as God is being very fair in here, you're going to have to penalize this man, and make it worth penalizing him so he feels it. And then secondly, you're going to profit for his crime. And third, you cannot go beyond this. There are restraints set here. The punishment fits the crime. That's eye for eye, tooth for tooth, etc. Yes, that's serious stuff, but you can't go over the top. Verse 5. If a man lets a field or vineyard be grazed bare, he lets his animal loose so it grazes in another man's field, he will make restitution. Restitution all through here, by the way, and all these things that you have to restore, it is always the same Hebrew word, shalom. He must shalom it. He must shalom it. Right? See that word peace? You can understand. How is it? It's never peace until it's shalomed, until it's made right. Now it's shalom. So when the Bible talks about having peace with God, somebody's going to make it right. We're not at peace until it's right. All right. So he will make shalom from the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard. Your animal's over there stripping somebody else's fields, kind of thing. Verse 6, if a fire breaks out and spreads on the thorn bushes so that the stacked grain or the standing grain of the field itself is consumed, he who started the fire will surely make shalom. He will shalom it. You got to fix this. If a man gives his neighbor money or goods to keep for him, and it is stolen from the man's house, if the thief is caught, he shall pay double. If the thief is not caught, then the owner of that house shall appear before the judges to determine whether he laid his hand on his neighbor property or not. Before I forget this, I remember a lady one time, she had a little boy, and they had been at some friend's house. When they got home, this little boy had a little toy car that belonged to the other house. And his mother, she says, you're not only going to return that, but you're going to give him 2 of your toys, kind of thing. So she made him take back the other boy's toy and 2 more. Okay, you see what she's doing? That's a very biblical move, I think. You're going to take this back, and the loss that he was going to experience, you will now experience. Okay, verse 9. For every breach of trust, whether it is for the ox or the donkey or for the sheep or for clothing, for any lost thing about which one says, this is it, the case of both parties will come before the judges. He whom the judges condemn will pay double his neighbor. He will pay, or he will shalom double. Okay? By the way, you understand when the Bible is talking about peace, it's using the word shalom, what it means. It means you have squared up with your debts. Okay? Verse 10. If a man gives his neighbor a donkey or ox or sheep or anything else to keep for him, if it dies or if it's hurt or it is not driven away, it's literally stolen while no one is looking, An oath before Yahweh shall be made by the two of them that he has not laid hand on his neighbor's property, and its owner will accept it, and he shall not make restitution. But if it is actually stolen from him, he will make restitution to its owner. If it is all torn to pieces, let him bring it as evidence, and he will not make restitution for that which has been torn to pieces. Because, a pack of wolves came through. I had your donkey. Well, I can't necessarily protect your donkey from a pack of wolves or bears and things like that. Verse 14. If a man borrows anything from his neighbor, and it is injured or it dies while its owner is not with it, then he will make full restitution. If I borrow a tool from you and I break your tool, it is reasonable that I restore your tool. Okay? And by the way, some of these animals, that was the ancient version of a tractor. I get the idea. So, but if I borrow something from you, that's the case. Verse 15, if its owner is with it, he will not make restitution. If it is hired, it came with its hire. That is, he's over there working for you. His donkey died. Well, that's a bummer because you hired on. And you hired on, because you're not just making wages, you're making money with the donkey, and so therefore this is your risk. All right. 16. If a man seduces a virgin, okay, who is not engaged, she's not betrothed, and he lies with her, he must pay a dowry for her to be his wife. Guess what? He got caught. It's his wedding day. All right. Seduces, by the way, it's a word that means to be simple in the sense of she's lacking experience. She doesn't understand life, okay, as we all are when we first are out living life, okay. He's going to have to marry her. Verse 17, if her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he's insulted, he's outraged, okay, he will pay the money equal to the dowry for virgins anyway. Ain't got no girl. Nothing. He's got to pay this. Mm. You will not allow a sorceress to live. Now, you will notice that when he comes into talking about sexual activity, he's talking, the context is go that to sorcery, witchcraft, spells that harm other people, okay? Followed by, verse 19, whoever lies with an animal will surely be put to death. And for some reason, this does go with some of that occultic witchcraft, etc. He who sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone, he will be utterly destroyed. Now, I think this is a package deal here. And you will not wrong a stranger or oppress him, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You will not afflict any widow or an orphan. These are the downcast and people in greatest need, right? The word for orphan literally means just somebody who's left alone. There's nobody to take care of this kid. If you afflict him at all, and if he cries out to me, I will surely hear his cry, and my heat will come up in my nostrils, is what the Hebrew says, and I will kill you. Do you like that? I think. You abuse him, I'm just going to kill you. And I'm going to kill you because I'm angry with you. Don't do it, okay? With the sword. And your wives will become widows, and your children will be the orphans. Okay? Now, is that eye for eye and tooth for tooth? Yes, it is, isn't it? Don't be doing this, okay? If you lend money to my people, to the poor, you shall not act as a creditor to him. You shall not charge him interest. I love the word interest because it's a Hebrew word for bite, like a dog bite. It's also used of the sting, of like a hornet sting. Don't sting him. Don't bite him, okay? You're lending money to a poor person, right? If you ever take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, and Proverbs says, yeah, take his cloak, it's okay, make him pay, you are to return it before the sun sets, for that is his only covering. It is his cloak, for his skin is the word. What else shall he sleep in? It shall come about when he cries to me, I will hear him, because I am gracious. Now notice, The guy owes me money. I can actually take his cloak, his outer cloak, right? So he's still got some clothes underneath that. He can go to work or whatever, but I have to give him back at night because if he's poor, that's what he sleeps in. It's kind of a poor version of a sleeping bag. But if you've seen the ancient Middle Eastern robes, sometimes they're like a blanket, aren't they? A blanket with sleeves, kind of thing. And they wear them, and many people would sleep in those robes at night. So can you picture Jesus, right? When people said, "I'll follow you," and he said, "Listen, I ain't no hotels." Okay, where are they sleeping? Side of the road. In what? Your robe. That's what you'll be wearing. Comfortable? Not comfortable, but it'll do. Verse 28. You shall not curse God or curse the ruler of your people. Do you remember in Acts, Paul quotes this because he cursed the high priest. Called him a fake, hypocrite, whitewashed tomb, etc. And he quotes this verses. I'm sorry I did that. The word for cursing God is literally the word for leaf again. You're going to shrug him off. He means nothing to you. 29. You will not delay the offerings from your harvest and your vineyards. Your vintage, right? The firstborn of your sons shall be given to me as well. That is, when your harvest comes in, deal with it. You owe taxes, as it were, an offering to the Lord, because that was the taxation of those days. You shall do the same with your oxen and with your sheep. It shall be with its mother for 7 days. On the 8th day you may give it to me. And you shall be holy men to me. Therefore you will not eat any flesh that's torn to pieces in the field. You'll throw it to the dogs. You walk out there, you got some animal that's chewed up or beat up, or that's not for you. Israel, when they slaughtered animals, had to bleed the animal out in a correct way to get the blood out. You not eat the soul of the life is in the blood, and therefore symbolically I want that out. So you're not being pagans here. So when you find this animal, this is off limits to you. Okay. We're going to stop a little bit early because there's no way we're going to get through the chapter 23. These are good basic laws for the most part, aren't they? I think. I've never understood, that he's going to talk about things like bribery, gifts, because he said it blinds men with open eyes. All of a sudden, they turn a blind eye. They look away. They don't see it. They don't do that kind of thing. And it's human nature. Do you know why we have police departments? Because of human nature. Do you know why we have armies? Because of human nature. Do you know why couples fight with each other? It's human nature. Why do kids have to be spanked? It's human nature. I had to be paddled because I couldn't live life fairly. I couldn't be fair with my brothers and my sisters, etc. And so my father would have to intervene, kind of thing, and he would do that quite well, as I remember, kind of thing. It's human nature, and God is building these kind of things to be fair and not abusive, to set parameters for what you should pay, and also parameters you cannot charge him that much for that, for whatever it is. Right? So, does he need to pay? Yes, that's shaloming things. You're making things right. Okay. Now, all these things, when you make it right, you give the animals back, you're shaloming those things, and that's the Hebrew word that's used. And so, when the Bible tells us that we have shalom with God, what's the implication of that? Do you owe him anything? You're paid in full, right? It's all been restored. It's all been put back. Why? Because of Jesus Christ. And so when the Lord says you can actually walk right into the Holy of Holies. In the Old Testament, you could not do that, but you can walk right into my presence, he said, through my Son, and all is well. And what if I've blown it? Come here, it's a throne of mercy. You will receive mercy. However, you understand, when a non-believer tries to come into the presence of God and it isn't shalom, how does God see him? Everything that's wrong with you, your character, the lying, the stealing, the viciousness, all that other stuff, and you're going to do all of that and make no restitution and walk into my presence, ain't going to happen. But because of Jesus Christ did that, we have shalom. Our debt has been paid. I owed him more than I could pay, as we all do. And Jesus Christ, these are beautiful, tetelestai, it's finished. The debt's paid, right? Because the picture over there was the blood goes before the throne of God and it's sprinkled there, showing that justice has been satisfied. and because of Jesus Christ. Without him, there's no satisfied justice. Right? Hence, when he's on the cross, we die with Christ or we die without Christ. Either way, we're headed to the throne of God, kind of thing. All roads are going to lead there and lead there in judgment. But Jesus, if you believe my words, you believe in me, he said, you have passed from death to life. Right? You're done. You're done. You're not dying anymore. You are satisfied. You are welcome with the Father. In my Father's house are many mansions, and I'm going to prepare a place for you. Father, thank you for our time. We worship you. Thank you for showing us what peace or shalom means. It means to put things back with interest. Lord, also, thank you for showing us the restrictions of justice, that we shouldn't take somebody who stole a candy bar and cut an arm off or something like that. That's way too far, way beyond the boundaries. And Lord, it's human nature to think that we're serious. The more serious we are, the meaner we are, the more cruel we are. And it's just not the case. Father, thank you for your word in the Old Testament. The law of the Lord is perfect, restoring the soul, showing us what being reasonable is. Thank you for your Son who has made all things shalom with you, Father. And thank you for your kindnesses in every way. We praise you. Amen.